Thanks, Storm. Actually, that takes care of 3 slides now, that introduction, so I won't have to...
Well, I'll see the picture.
Yeah, John and I are going to do a tag team act with is that coming through all right? Yeah. John and I are going to do a tag team act with this because in the books, many of the photographs from General Motors Australia, John actually physically scanned himself. And so I'm always grateful for that kind of hands-on involvement. So there's a couple of people who are responsible for this. Let me talk about what it is that takes someone to bring 4 books together in the space of 18 months. We call them Design to Driveway. And basically the orange and the green are the first 2 volumes, and the red and the blue, which you see here, are the 3rd and 4th volumes. So that's why they look like that, and I thought I'd just bring those 2 along. In starting out on this journey, I thought I was just going to write a simple couple of books, just one actually to start with, on, gee, let's do a book about styling Australia's cars. There'd been some books coming out on that, and I thought that I could also have a story. I found out that this actually wasn't going to be the case. I found out, after having written all of this and getting close, that I actually was writing about a Grand Alliance. And I'm going to talk about the Grand Alliance at the end of this presentation rather than now. What I'd like to do is take you through my journey as to finding out why I didn't write the book I was writing, why I actually wrote something else. And I didn't know it until the end of the journey, almost as I put the last few words in to the last introduction of volume 4. It all became a light bulb moment. But let me tell you a little bit about Design to Driveway, what it is. They are each volume 750 copies, each individually numbered. There are no reprints. So it's a collector's item type book. And let me put it into perspective for you. This is where Norm helped out enormously here. Back in 2010, this is the short version, I launched a magazine called Retro Autos, for which the logo and the name is trademarked to my consulting company, owns it, so it's a proprietary thing. Retro Autos appeared 3 volumes, 3 magazines in print. I realised that was a very quick way to go broke, is to produce classic car magazines. So I converted it all online. Shortly after that, Mark Baer, the marketing director of Shannons Insurance, contacted me and said, we'd like you to enter into a commercial arrangement with us and produce your e-magazine on our Shannons Club website, which it has been there, and you can go and see it. It's free, but it's not downloadable. Now, Shannons are pretty smart. They want you to keep going back to their website. They don't want you to look at the magazine in the privacy of your home. And really the magazine is all about, if you've read Collectible Automobile from the United States, it's modelled on that, which each month tends to be a car. And if I can find the styling photos that led to that final design and the story that goes with it, through interviewing people or researching, that's what I'll do. And what you see up here is just a couple of examples. One being the never-released EF Holden, which we're able to access, the Cadillac Seville, the first Valiant, and all the secret grills that were done for the FJ Holden. They're just some of the recent issues we've done. So, the genesis. No plan, a lot of ideas for these books, and it came about through a number of things back in January 2018. One was I started to accumulate all these stories from the Retro Autos magazine itself. I got some great links with GM Heritage in the USA, and they were able to, where they've digitalised so much, they were providing me with a lot of information. And one of the guys there, John Kairos, who's one of the researchers in one of my conversations with him, said, why don't you produce a book? I said, John, this is expensive stuff. He said, we'll help. We won't charge anything for the use of our photographs. So, then comes the two books by Dr. Norm Darwin and Paul Berenger around car design and car developing. And then Mark Baer took a look at both of those. One I gave him as a Christmas present because you always look after the person who pays your bills. It was Norm's book. And the other, Shannons decided to support Paul Berenger's launch of his book commercially that way. Mark actually rang me up when I was on holidays in January 2018 and said, let's celebrate the Australian car design industry with a book. He actually said, with some books, he said there's possibly at least 4 volumes we could do with all the materials you've got. So that's how the journey started. Excited by this, I decided I'd send an email to my pal here, who I had met through the AHO, about we were going to do this, we're on the way. And I said, this is the actual email that John sent back to me on the very date. And I'll let you read it, which is, sounds exciting. I'll have a chat to Richard Filazzo, who's the guy in charge of design for Asia Pacific for General Motors, and see how Holden could support it. Very quickly there came an invitation to go down to come from Sydney to Melbourne to have a look. And I found myself outside the holy grail of holy grails, Holden's secret vaults, where inside behind there, in through the doors, through the clanking of the safe, the big safe you walk into, and special stuff, I was going to be able to get to see what Holden's might have looked like. And this is where John takes over, because he's going to tell you what happened inside Holden and why they agree.
Thanks, David. And yes, this is in fact a photo of our actual archives. David didn't get any further past this point. As I'm speaking, I'll show you some images of the real archive. These are kept in a secure area of our studio, so they're obviously not available to the public generally. But they do consist of many photographs, transparencies, slides, other media that really document all the aspects of a new vehicle development. This includes things like sketches, tape drawings, but really they're mainly photos of clay model development and also the fiberglass models that were developed later in the program. The records have been painstakingly filed since the development of the FE model around the mid-1950s, up until digital photography came along around the time of the VE Commodore. And they really are a treasure trove of fascinating iterations of vehicle development, alternative design themes, models that never made it to the production line, along with those that of course did. And even though there have been some missteps and dead ends on the way, it's a history we're really proud of, and it's something we really feel is worth sharing. It's part of not only our cultural heritage, but also a demonstration of our local abilities over many decades. And it's certainly something our design director, Richard Filazzo, is passionate about and supportive of, so he was more than happy to let David come in and have a look around. So although they're not publicly accessible, and we do try to keep a tight rein on them, we're more than happy to make them available to anyone wishing to recount that heritage. So we commend people like David, Norm and many others who are capturing this history for posterity and publishing it to a wider audience. And we're pleased we can play a part in the design to drive a story, which David will now continue with.
As Don said yesterday, don't let historians go to your records, because they find things. Just as an aside before going on with the story, if you saw the last photograph and this one, you'll see the post-it notes. They're the ones I put in, and they were the photos that I'd asked John to scan for me. But also, if you take a look at the tabs here, you'll see that this is the never released HV Holden, which was supposed to replace the HQ. And if you look at the dates on the tabs, before Christmas 1970, the HQ wasn't released until July 1971. So already, these are photographs of a car that is being thought of to be released 3 years beyond this date here. So this is an absolute treasure trove of thinking about cars and car designs, and I was really lucky to get into it. Let me just go back. With Holden's support, what that allowed me to do was start to actually leverage some contacts I had. What it meant, I could go and have a story with people. I could actually speak to some other designers and say, I've got some backing from a major insurance company. The doors of Holden are open to me. The doors of General Motors in the US are open to me. I was then able to have a conversation with Michelle Cook here in Melbourne about Ford, and they semi-opened their doors. And also with Chrysler Historical Services in the USA. When they understood what was happening through telephone calls and emails, they also opened the doors. So Holden's acceptance and agreement was key in cracking open access. It also meant I was able to speak with a little bit more authority to a whole range of people who contribute to the books there. John Shannons there. John is the guy who's responsible for the look and feel of the Monaros, the Tiranas, and the HQ Holdens. Peter Nankervis, same cars. Phil Smoot, who you know of. Jack Telnack, the first design director for Ford Australia, out here when he was 29, now in retirement, went on to be the global director of Ford Design. As soon as I explained to him what was going on and I needed his help, yes, he was there to help. So there's some real enthusiasms with this. We ended up with a basic approach. It's going to be, the books are going to be image driven, most of the photographs never seen before. The designers themselves would tell the story. We'd use quotes and anecdotes to drive the narrative. This was not going to be a historical view of things. This was going to be the cars and the people, and trying to put all that together. Some of the great quotes that came out of it, and this is just some, and they're all sprinkled through the book. One of the best, I thought, which is why it's up first, was John Shannons explaining to me how he got to Australia at the age of 26. He was called into his boss's office, a guy called Chuck Jordan. And he thought he heard Chuck Jordan say, "We'd like you to go to Austria." And he thought, that's great. Went home, talked to his girlfriend, said, "We're going to Europe." He went back the next day, said, "Yes, I'd love to go to Austria." Chuck said, "Excuse me, I said Australia, not Austria." John's response was, "Where is Australia?" And apparently they actually went over to a globe that Chuck Jordan had, and he spun it around and pointed to it. Had not John Shannons said yes to Australia, the look of our cars and Holden's cars in that period from 65 through to 69, when the Monaro, the HQ Monaro, the LC Tirana and the HQ Holdens were done, would have looked significantly different. The reason the cars look like they do is because John thought he was going to Europe. On such things do large design projects turn. Brian Rossi drew the XA Falcon Coupe on a napkin in a bar while they were changing planes at Waikiki Beach in 1968. I assume that still happens. Sorry, yeah. What happened? First two volumes sold out, like that. That made Mark Baird very happy. We covered the costs. They were all printed in Australia. There was no way we were going to do a book about Australian car design and have them printed somewhere else. Mark was insistent on that to the point where it basically put the books into loss mode, and he insisted we all take a cut in our fees for it to make that happen. So anyway, that's where we are. What it also made him do was say, we're going to do volumes 3 and 4 straight away, as soon as that one sold. So that's why we did those ones as well. So, what did I find out in this thing? of taking a story from design to driveway. Well, car companies can be incredibly generous, I have found, when it comes to providing things. I have found incredible support from AHA members through all of this. And I believe there is now an appetite, not a great one, but an appetite for more books about car design history in this country. I think we've been able to prove it. Norm's been publishing books. Paul Berenger's been able to put a book together. We've got 4 going in, so I think there is a market for this kind of storytelling. And it's probably around about, commercially, 750 to 1,000 copies each time. So if you're into the numbers thing, that's about where the limit is, probably not anymore. But I think there's a market for it. I also had an aha moment in this, and this is when I'll get back to the Grand Alliance. It was all to do with when I got to thinking about the VH Valiant and why people would actually do it, spend all the money at a time when Chrysler had just 12% of market share in this country, when they had no money for resources, when basically they had no money to match Holden or Ford across their range. They were the eternal number 3 player. And yet here they were. They sat down in 1968 and decided they would build and design and sell a completely all-Australian car when they could have just taken another off-the-shelf from the United States, which they've been doing since the first Valiant arrived. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I think the answer has very little to do. Well, it has something to do with commercial nous. I think it's got something to do with once you come from anywhere else and join the car industry in Australia, something happens to you. Something, I don't know, gets in the blood. Call it gasoline or something, but you become, what would you call it? You become a supporter, a champion of an industry of cars built in Australia, made by Australians, for Australians and designed in Australians. Why else? Why else would Chrysler do this? Why else would Leyland want to put together the P76 and sell it, when in many ways totally underfunded like Chrysler was back in 1968? Why would they do that? Commercial reality today would tell you do not do it, and commercial reality would probably drive the decision. But I think they were different times. I think back in those days there was a grand alliance in Australia, and I think this grand alliance was between the government, the unions, employees, people who worked in car companies, people who bought cars, that there should be cars designed by Australians, made out of Australian content, made for Australians, specifically for Australia. I think that grand alliance was unspoken. I think it started when Ben Chifley said, or whether he actually said it, those famous words, "It's a beauty," because I think he was commenting about a nation-building project that the government had decided to support, which was the car industry. And I think that nation-building project, in many ways, helped bring Australia together. It was a common purpose, a grand alliance that everyone agreed to. Whether they said it openly or not, it allowed Holden to get away with Australia's own car. You'd never get away with that today as an American company. You just wouldn't. But we accepted it. And I think the grand alliance slowly started to fade away. It was why these cars were built. It was why Americans and Brits and people from all around the world came and worked in the car industry and had a passion for it. They had a pride for it. It was about a dream. And I think that dream's gone. And I've got 5 minutes. So that was my major learning from all of this. I didn't really write a book about car design or styling. I wrote a book about an era that's past. I wrote a book, I think, about a compelling dream and a grand alliance that many people today do not understand and have no interest in anymore. But I think we do. I think we do in this group here have it. And one of the reasons for Design to Driveway now, as I see it, is keeping that dream alive. I'd like to end on Phil Smoot's great quote, which I have used many times now. We were young and we wanted to design great cars. And I think that's right. Thank you.